Hey guys, Zoom tonight here in a little bit at 6 p.m. I hope you'll join us. Remind each other, reach out to those that may not been with us in a while, and let's hang out. I'll give you the sign-on info before I jump off here. But I want to talk just a minute about social distancing before and after social distancing. Now, we are in a situation now where we're told that we can't interact with people, that we have to keep our distance. But long before this happened, we know all too well what it is to actually choose to keep our distance. You know who they are for you, and I know for me, and we've observed it in others, where we have intentionally chosen to socially distance from certain people. Maybe those who annoy us or that we don't like. We don't like where they're from, what they look like. We don't like who they hang out with, what they stand for, how they act, how they smell. Fill in the blank. Individuals and groups of people that we have chosen that we are not going to come near them socially. We keep our distance. And this is what Jesus walked into. In his world, in his environment, it was thick with social distancing understandings and the way things were, particularly with the religious leaders. There were certain groups that were in and out, excluded, included. And Jesus walks into this and he speaks to this social distancing that's going on. Now I'm going to read from Luke 14. This is where Jesus is at a dinner from religious leaders. He was invited to it. And talk about being a bad party guest. I mean, here's what Jesus does in the middle of dinner. It says, Jesus said to the host, when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they can't repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. So Jesus is saying, don't invite, when you're giving a big dinner, don't let it be your friends, your brothers, sisters, relatives, or your rich neighbors, because they can pay you back. And Jesus' audience probably was thinking completely about like Herod as well, who we read in the Gospels had a big old dinner banquet, and he invited those high in command and the military officials and all the great leaders of Galilee. You know, that's how that king did it. And so they know what he's talking about. And then on the flip side, Jesus is saying instead invite the blind, the lame, the crippled, the poor. We have to know what that meant for this day. Like in Leviticus 21, there's strict restrictions given out that people can't be priests if they had any kind of flaws or imperfections. There was an early religious community there in Qumran called the Essenes. I'm just going to read into that community what the restrictions were real quick. It said this, and let no person smitten with any human impurity whatever enter the assembly of God. And every person smitten with these impurities, unfit to occupy a place in the midst of the congregation. And every person smitten in his flesh, paralyzed in his feet or hands, lame or blind or deaf or dumb, or smitten in his flesh with a blemish visible to the eye, or any aged person that totters and is unable to stand firm in the midst of the congregation, let these persons not enter. Wow, how about that, man? Yeah, we're all like, are you kidding me? But that's the mindset we're dealing with. Jesus says, guess what? These people that you're excluding, that's who I want you to include. That was a just explosive observation and statement to make. And Jesus is saying, God's not after your religious acts. He's after a way of right living. He wants you to practice humility and generosity in your social interactions. And Jesus is saying, this is how it's going to be. For Jesus, the meal was not about, prestige or paybacks or being high on the scale of the social ladder. For Jesus, a meal was a celebration of everyone, a celebration of including everyone, of this inclusiveness and this thing that would foreshadow the inclusiveness and diversity of the kingdom of God. Jesus is doing a reversal and saying, here's how you're doing it. Here's how King Herod may do it. Here's how you all are trying to do it. But here's how God does it. And he's saying, so when you do that, don't invite those that can pay you back. And I just want to say, it doesn't mean we can't invite our siblings or our neighbors or that kind of thing. That's not what's being said here. Like, hey, you can't ever invite anybody. Jesus is laying out a way to live in general, a way to see the world, a way to see people, an equalizing foundation where nobody is more important or superior to the others. He's saying invite those in your social circles that can't repay you, will never be superior, never be over you, that'll never have anything to offer you in the sense of monetary or prestige or popularity, or that kind of stuff. He's saying live generously with grace and humility and reach out and include others. So that's what I want to ask us. We all, every single one of us, are guilty of some intentional social distancing that does not align itself with how Jesus would do it. We've all done it. And as we are in this time of social distancing, and as we are really experiencing what it means to be distant from people and how we struggle with that and how it can be tough and lonely and it's just hard to do, maybe this will help us hear these words of Jesus that gives us the gospel of social distancing, which is, don't let it be so. And so when we come out of this, maybe we can be more in tune with how Jesus navigates social distancing, which he doesn't. He does social gathering, interaction. He goes across the boundaries and he reaches out and he intentionally chooses to come near to people, to show grace, to show generosity, to show love, and especially those that have been distanced by who they are or by certain ways that we've seen the world or certain stereotypes, whatever it may be. So let's reflect on how we've socially distanced ourselves from people before this, and then what it really feels like now as we are actually having to do that. And then on the other side of this, and even start that now, begin to break down our ways of social distancing and let our faith be people who are inclusive, who reach out, who make sure that nobody feels they are socially distant, right? That they're not lonely, that they're not left out, that someone's on their side, most importantly, that God's on their side. We'll see y'all tonight. The ID is 423-426-1734, my phone number, and the password's 2020. See you in a little while.